The airlock door hissed open, and I already had my hand on my sidearm before my boots touched the deck. Every alarm in my head was screaming that something was wrong. The station was too quiet. No greeting party. No translator drones humming near the entrance. Just a long metal corridor lit in pale blue, and the smell of something burnt hanging in the recycled air. My name is Daniel Whitfield, and 3 months ago, I was a tactical officer on a rescue cutter, pulling stranded sailors out of freezing wreckage near Neptune. Today I was standing on an alien station light years from anything I understood, because the galaxy had asked for diplomats and Earth, in its usual hurry, had sent us instead. Behind me, Corporal Maya Ashford moved into the corridor with her rifle low but ready. She had been part of my crew since the beginning, steady in a way that made panic feel embarrassing. Beside her, Ethan Cole scanned the walls with a handheld reader, frowning at numbers only he understood. We were supposed to be here for talks. Simple opening negotiations with the Kesrathi Assembly about safe trade routes through their territory. Instead, the moment we stepped off our shuttle, the station comms had gone dead, and the automated docking system had locked every corridor except the one leading straight ahead. That was never a good sign. I keyed my comm. Nothing but static answered. "They cut the frequency," Ashford said, voice tight. "Someone doesn't want us talking to command." We moved forward together, backs close to the wall, weapons ready, but lowered enough not to look like an invasion. Diplomacy first. Always diplomacy first. That was the rule command had drilled into us before we left, even though none of us had trained a single day as diplomats. We were soldiers, wearing borrowed titles, hoping instinct would fill the gaps training never gave us. The corridor opened into a wide chamber, and what I saw stopped me cold. 6 Kesrathi delegates were tied to support pillars with thick cable, their tall, reed-like bodies slumped from exhaustion. Their compound eyes tracked us the moment we entered, wide with something between fear and desperate hope. Standing over them were 3 armed figures in mismatched armor, clearly not Kesrathi, clearly not friendly. "Earth representatives," one of the armed figures said, voice distorted through a cheap translator box. "You arrived early." "We arrived on schedule," I said, keeping my tone level even though my pulse was hammering. "Release the delegates." The figure laughed, a harsh electronic crackle. The assembly invited diplomats, weak, careful, predictable. Instead they sent soldiers. That mistake will cost them everything. I understood then. This wasn't about us. It was about proving a point, using the Kesrathi delegates as leverage against the assembly itself, showing every watching species that the growing alliance between humans and Kesrathi could be broken with enough force. "Who are you?" Ashford asked, stepping slightly forward to cover my flank. "Names do not matter," the leader said. "What matters is that your presence here proves the assembly's weakness." They called for negotiation and sent children with guns. Cole's reader beeped softly, and he angled it toward me without a word. Explosive charges, hidden along the pillars holding the delegates, enough to tear the chamber apart. My mind raced through every training scenario I had ever survived, searching for something close enough to matter. Rescue operations, hostage extractions. None of it had prepared me for hostages who were an entirely different species, in a chamber I had never seen, against people who wanted headlines more than victory. "You want to send a message," I said slowly. "That message only works if someone survives to hear it. Kill them, and every species watching learns you murder unarmed prisoners. Let them go, and you still get your story, that Earth sent soldiers instead of diplomats." The leader tilted his head, considering. "Clever," he said, "but not clever enough to change my orders." His hand moved toward a detonator clipped to his belt, and everything narrowed to that single motion. I didn't think. I moved. I closed the distance before he could press the trigger, driving my shoulder into his chest and forcing his arm upward as the detonator slipped from his fingers and skittered across the floor. Ashford was already moving on the second figure, disarming him with a speed that looked almost effortless. Years of training compressed into 3 seconds of motion. Cole dove for the detonator, catching it before it could roll near the charges. The third figure raised his weapon toward the delegates, and for one terrible heartbeat I thought we had failed. Then a burst of light from the corridor behind us knocked the weapon from his hands. Kesrathi station security, alerted at last, poured into the chamber, disarming the last attacker and rushing toward their trapped delegates. I stood there, breathing hard, my hands shaking now that the moment had passed. Ashford helped me to my feet, her face pale but steady. Cole was already working with the delegates, cutting through the cable with careful, practiced hands, as if defusing bombs and freeing prisoners were simply two versions of the same job. One of the delegates, an older Kesrathi with silver markings along his long neck, looked at me with something I didn't expect. Not fear, not suspicion, gratitude, deep and unmistakable. "You came for us," he said through his translator, voice trembling, "even though you were sent to talk, not to fight." "We came for whoever needed us," I said, still catching my breath. "That's the only difference between us and them." Word of what happened spread through the station faster than any official report could travel. By the time the Assembly Council convened an emergency session, every delegate present already knew the story, retold with small changes, each time it passed from one mouth to another, the way stories always grow when fear turns into relief. The council chamber was vast, built for quiet reflection, not chaos. 11 species sat in a wide ring, translator drones hovering near each shoulder. I stood at the center, with Ashford and Cole beside me, feeling smaller than I ever had in uniform. An elder from a species I still couldn't pronounce properly rose slowly. "The Assembly summoned diplomats," she said, voice measured. "Instead, Earth sent warriors who saved our people when diplomacy alone would have failed. Explain this contradiction." I thought carefully before answering, aware that every word would shape how this station remembered humanity. "There is no contradiction," I said. "We are soldiers because our history taught us to protect people quickly, without waiting for permission. We were sent here to build peace, and peace sometimes needs protecting before it can even begin. If diplomats had stood in that chamber today, unarmed and untrained, your delegates might not have survived to see any treaty signed at all." Silence stretched across the chamber, broken only by the soft hum of translator drones. The silver-marked delegate I had spoken with earlier stood, slow and deliberate, drawing every eye toward him. "I was there," he said. "I felt the fear of dying without cause, tied to a pillar, while strangers debated whether my life mattered. Then I watched 3 humans move without hesitation, risking their own safety for people who were, until that moment, complete strangers. If this is what Earth calls sending soldiers instead of diplomats, then perhaps the Assembly has misunderstood the difference between the two." Another representative, sharper in tone, leaned forward. "Sentiment does not build lasting alliances. What guarantees do we have that this instinct will translate into stable agreements?" "None," I admitted honestly. "Except one. Every agreement we sign, we intend to honor, the same way we intended to protect your delegates the moment we understood they were in danger. Trust isn't written into treaties first. It's proven through actions, and then treaties simply record what already exists." The elder studied me for a long moment, then turned to her fellow council members, exchanging glances that carried more meaning than any translator could capture. "Then let the record show," she said finally, "that Earth's first act within this assembly was not negotiation, but protection. Let the treaty we draft reflect gratitude, not merely convenience." A ripple of agreement passed through the chamber, subtle gestures and small movements that meant far more to these species than words ever could. Later that night, standing alone on an observation deck overlooking the stars, Ashford found me staring out at a view I still couldn't quite believe was real. "You did good today," she said, leaning against the railing beside me. "We did good," I corrected. I just happened to be the one standing closest to the detonator. She smiled, tired but genuine. Command sent soldiers because they trusted us to handle whatever the diplomats couldn't predict. Looks like they were right. I thought about the delegates we had saved, the treaty now taking shape because of what happened in that chamber, and the strange, unplanned way humanity had introduced itself to the galaxy. Not through carefully worded speeches or rehearsed handshakes, but through instinct, sacrifice, and the simple refusal to let anyone die when we had the power to stop it. The galaxy had expected diplomats. What it received instead was something it hadn't known it needed. People who acted first and explained later, who treated strangers like their own the moment danger appeared. Maybe that wasn't the introduction anyone had planned, but standing there under an alien sky, watching new alliances form from nothing but courage and instinct, I understood that it might have been exactly the introduction the galaxy needed.